Hey, what's up guys? Everything Apple Pro here. It's not often you get to leak Apple's upcoming iPhone design, but today is that day. In collaboration with Max Weinbach, I'll be sharing with you the iPhone 12 Pro Max, the 6.7-inch flagship design. It's pretty much exactly what we expected it to be, but there are many little key differences between the 11 Pro Max and this device, which I did not foresee. So let's get into those details. There's so much here. First off, I want to say after SLS printing this, I spent some time with it comparing it to the 11 Pro Max series. It's sleek. This is in every way an evolution for the iPhone design, and after handling it, it feels amazing. I mean, this device just feels futuristic thanks to a huge reduction in bezels, a massive camera, and a smaller notch. There are so many little things on the design I did not foresee Apple doing, and I'd like to cover all of those in this video. Now, I had so many leaks to share that I had to split this video up in two, and this weekend we'll be doing another exclusive on the features and more in depth on the camera and displays, including ProMotion or 120 Hz refresh rate leaks. So stay tuned for that. And in this video, I'm announcing a giveaway for 3 new iPhone SE models to celebrate that launch. What an amazing device. So first off, I 3D printed it, SLS printed it to get the detail out, and comparing it to the 11 Pro Max, I was pleasantly surprised with just how futuristic it feels. In no way was the square housing uncomfortable or digging into your palm like I thought it would be. This is pretty much the design of the iPad Pro in the iPhone. And Bloomberg just reported that the iPhone would be very iPad Pro-like. I can confirm without a shadow of a doubt that that is true. So where did this CAD originate from? Apple would love to know, but Max Weinbach's source works with accessories, and it's pretty standard issue to receive this CAD around this time. Unclear how, from where, but this is legitimate. John Prosser also chimed in saying, yes, this is the real deal. Now, Max Weinbach does warn us that it's 70% complete. This gives us an idea of how the body, the frame will look, the general camera size and positioning, and the notch here is not 100%. So the CAD itself came with the same existing size notch, but some recent leaks from Max Weinbach's source gave us the information to fill in there, and I'll kind of talk about why the shape is the way that it is, far from confirmed. There was a report back in January by Makita Kara which detailed the iPhone 12 Pro Max and gave us some specifications. The size of the lens was growing, the body was 7.4 millimeters, and this CAD confirms that. In fact, it's more than likely that they had these CADs back in January and we just now got access to them. So yes, it is 7.4 millimeters. It's thinner than an 11 Pro Max, and you certainly feel it. It is just a little bit of a larger device, slightly taller and slightly wider, 78 millimeters versus 77 of the 11 Pro Max. The display to body ratio is higher now. The bezels are 0.9 millimeters thinner, meaning it has a much more futuristic look. The entire phone is larger now. It's a 6.7-inch display, so it definitely feels massive. I mean, there's a huge presence to it. The source also confirmed the camera layout on the rear. That iOS 14 glyph that we saw earlier, it's true. They confirmed that is the actual layout. Now, the sizing and spacing of the lenses is not completely correct, but the overall lens is different. First off, it's about 5 millimeters larger in length and width, and it's now a perfect square compared to the 11 Pro Max, which is a slightly elongated rectangle. The bottom right module is a LiDAR sensor, although Apple is testing out a version where the LiDAR sensor sits on the top right. Now, alongside that CAD model, there was a separate model. Apple is still not done finalizing the design, so we could see some shift here, but Apple is looking into 2 separate prototypes. The other model had a notch that wasn't as tall, but was as wide as current notches on the iPhone. And this notch that you're looking at in our design, so the curvature of the notch has actually changed. In the prototype, the notch was the same width, but the curvature was different. Then this source obtained information that the notch would be shrinking. It would be just a little larger than the OnePlus 6 notch. So as a point of reference, that's how large it could be, slightly larger. And we've adjusted the CAD to feature that notch. So the notch, not confirmed. We know roughly how large it could be, not the curvature. This curvature was on the original CAD notch, so we used it in this smaller version. Now, it's too early to say whether or not the entire lineup will have a flat-edged chassis, although in Bloomberg's report, they mentioned that at least 2 models will, the 12 Pro series. We don't know about the 12 non-Pro yet. Now, the glass is completely flat. Gone is 2.5D glass where the edge is wraps into the rounded frame. This glass is almost completely flat with a very subtle curve on the edges when you get in real close. The glass itself sits slightly above the frame, 0.08 millimeters, very similar to that of the iPad Pro right now. But generally it seems like a safer design where if you drop it, not as much glass is exposed as on current models. Now in the frame, the antenna bands are now getting wider. They're now 1.83 millimeters compared to 1 millimeter on the 11 Pro series, of course, because of 5G. We knew that Apple is working extensively on new antenna technology, and the new models will have higher cellular and Wi-Fi speeds, so this is a natural result of that. Apple is widening the antenna bands. Another interesting detail about the camera is the run-up is changing. The way it juts out of the glass on the back is changing. So the lenses on the current 11 Pro protrude much more than they will on the iPhone 12 Pro series. Those will be almost the new iPad Pro-like, where the lens itself sits closer to the glass. They don't jut out as much, but the overall lens run-up will jut out more. Here's a very crude graphic to show you that. So as you can see, the 11 Pro Max run-up slightly less, not as tall, but the 12 Pro one is taller, but the lenses themselves do not protrude as much. This, coupled with a larger lens, means that camera has quite a presence on the back, and it's a very even looking design. I honestly like it, but we got one thing wrong in our concept, so disregard this. The LiDAR sensor will likely have an aesthetic ring like the other lenses. We don't portray that in our renders right now, and our next exclusive renders will show that. It'll likely be slightly raised for a more even look on the lens. And it's possible we made the lenses slightly too large in our concept. We don't know how much larger they're getting, but likely about 1 to 2 millimeters larger. We'll work on the spacing. Again, this CAD was only 70% complete. The rest we're filling in with the source's information. Now, I assume the smaller 6.1-inch Pro model will have the same large camera, but until we see that in the CADs, we cannot confirm it. Also, the mute switch, likely not going to be a vertical mute switch as Ben Geskin predicted earlier. So that one, as nice as it is on the new OnePlus series, will likely not be happening. Another interesting tidbit is the power button now sits lower. The phone overall is growing in size, so it makes sense that Apple is positioning the buttons slightly lower than the 11 Pro Max. This is a comfort move. I do like it. Now it gets even stranger. The SIM card tray, yeah, that's been relocated to the other side of the phone. Now, unclear why this is happening, we can assume that the logic board is getting moved to the other side of the phone. And if you remember, Compare Raja, during the iPhone 11 Pro prototyping, mentioned that Apple was looking into a new internal layout where the logic board sits up above the battery, and the battery, being an almost square-like shape, will be taking up the bottom portion of the phone, so it would be less L-shaped like, more square-like. It's possible that that leak was just a year too early. And what's even crazier is what's replacing the SIM card tray is a smart connector. At first I was a little dubious of this, but seeing it in the CAD actually printed, yes, it looks like a smaller version of the smart connector. It's just as wide, 3.5 millimeters, same width as the iPad Pro's smart connector. And from that, we can assume it is a smart connector, just a slightly not as long version. It's 21 millimeters, whereas the iPad one is 25 millimeters. Why would Apple add a smart connector to an iPhone? We don't know. We heard rumors long ago that Apple was working on an Apple Pencil for an iPhone or Apple Pencil compatibility. Of course, in its current state, it would not support an Apple Pencil as the power button would intrude on that charging. But it's possible Apple could be working on a slew of other accessories and other uses for a smart connector on the side of an iPhone. Interesting. And this CAD model has one less speaker hole on the right side speaker grill versus the 11 Pro Max, something Maka Takara reported on, saying the speaker grill would be more uniform on the 2020 lineup. And speaking of speakers, Max Weinbach's source reports that this year's iPhone will be getting better speakers. They'll be 10 to 15% louder with better dynamic range, something I'm very much looking forward to, as the speakers have not been getting louder lately. They've been getting deeper, better audio, but not louder. So this is good news. And of course, the Lightning port remains. Apple is not going to USB-C. Like we heard earlier, they're jumping straight to a portless future, and that's why AirPower must come back. And a question I have for the engineers out there, I personally think that this would make a difference, but a squared design seems more logical for Apple going forward. It seems easier if Apple really is all about miniaturization and getting the most Out of every nook and cranny inside the iPhone, a square design just seems logical where they can cram more into a thinner, smaller, but wider and taller frame. And my impressions after handling this CAD model, wow, the bezels being shrunk goes a long way in making this thing feel much more futuristic. That and the thinner frame, I love that it's thinner. You know, it didn't have to be, but the fact that it's a square design and it's thinner now, it tricks your brain into feeling like this came from 10 years in the future. A couple other things from Max Weinbach. The navy blue color you're seeing in a lot of our renders, it is happening. Apple is looking into it. They're actually testing out 2 separate versions of it. Both are fairly dark, but different shades of that navy blue. Apple is also considering replacing midnight green with a navy blue, which is most likely going to happen. Also, Apple is looking into new colors for the iPhone 12 successor non-Pro model, and the colors they're looking into are a light blue, a shade of violet, and a light orange. Out of those 3 colors, Apple is considering keeping 2, and it's unclear whether those would be replacing existing colors. I'd assume so. So let me know what you think of that design. Personally, I love it. That filleted iPad Pro design on an iPhone needed to happen long ago, but it's the perfect design to herald the new age of 5G in an iPhone. Also, we should know more with the next set of CADs. Remember, these are old from January of 2020, so there will be more changes in the more finalized CADs we'll be sharing in the future. And the last bit from Max Weinbach, that feature discovered in iOS 14. Apparently, Apple is trying to bring it to all car manufacturers, or at least more. Right now, they're working with BMW, which is why we saw the i8 in the iOS 14 leak, and they're even working with Tesla, but Tesla is being prickly about it. Come on, Elon, we want this feature on our iPhones. Native integration would be sweet. Oh, in iOS 13.4.5, Beta 2 was dropped. One notable change is that new feature when sharing a song from Apple Music to Instagram Stories now includes a direct link to visit that song in Apple Music. Apple is getting smarter, trying to get you to subscribe to Apple Music through features. Genius. Okay guys, this has got to be the craziest Apple leaks I have ever done. I've never shared a design on my channel that hasn't been seen elsewhere, but this is the iPhone 12 Pro. It's not fully detailed, fully accurate, but this is the overall design. Thanks for watching guys. Stay tuned for part 2. Peace.